Transgenic organisms are organisms that have undergone genetic changes by transformation with foreign DNA. Transgenic means that one or more DNA sequences from another species have been introduced by artificial means. Animals usually are made transgenic by having a small sequence of foreign DNA injected into a fertilized egg or developing embryo. Introducing foreign DNA into a variety of different tissues can make transgenic plants. The nucleus of all cells in every living organism contains genes made up of DNA. These genes store information that regulates how our bodies form and function. Genes can be altered artificially so that some characteristics of an animal are changed. For example, an embryo that can have an extra functioning gene from another source artificially introduced into it, or a gene introduced which can knock out the functioning of another particular gene in the embryo. There are two main reasons that transgenic organisms are created. Some transgenic animals are produced for specific economic traits. Other transgenic animals are produced as disease models. Animals are genetically manipulated to exhibit disease symptoms so that effective treatments can be studied. There are three main ways that transgenic organisms can be created. The first is DNA microinduction. The mouse was the first animal to undergo successful gene transfer using DNA microinduction. This method involves the transfer of a desired gene from another member of the same species or from a different species into the pronucleus of a reproductive cell. The manipulated cell, which first must be cultured in vitro, that means in a lab, not in a live animal, to develop to a specific embryonic phase, is then transferred to the recipient female. Where transgenic organisms can be created is through retrovirus-mediated gene transfer. A retrovirus is a virus that carries its genetic material in the form of RNA instead of DNA. This method involves using retroviruses as vectors to transfer genetic material into the host cell, resulting in a chimera, which is an organism consisting of tissues or parts of diverse genetic constitution. Chimeras are inbred for as many as 20 generations until homozygous transgenic offspring are born. The third method is embryonic stem cell mediated gene transfer. This method involves isolation of totipotent stem cells that can develop into any type of specialized cell, from embryos. The desired gene is inserted into these cells. The cells containing the desired DNA are incorporated into the host embryo, resulting in a transgenic animal. There are no laws against the use of transgenic animals. However, there are some regulations, and they have to go through a process before becoming approved. Some regulations include a plan for recapture, an update at least every 2 years, a reading list on ethical and technical aspects of transgenic organisms, and animal usage statistics, and more. There are agricultural, medical, and industrial applications of transgenic organisms. Agricultural applications include creating larger herds with specific traits, such as cows producing more milk, and improving the size of livestock, such as growing pigs with more meat. Crops are also often genetically manipulated to produce more abundant and disease-resistant products. Scientists are currently working on creating disease-resistant livestock. However, that is not a quite reality yet. Medical applications include using transgenic organisms for organ transplants. Pigs may provide the transplant organs if there is a shortage. Milk-producing transgenic animals are especially useful for medicines. Products such as insulin, growth hormone, and blood anti-clotting factors are soon to be or have already been obtained from the milk of transgenic cows, sheep, or goats. A transgenic cow exists that produces the substance to help human red cells grow. Industrial applications include material fabrication and safety tests of chemicals. The biggest example of this is the spider goat. Scientists added cells from silk spiders to goats. The result was the goats began to produce strands of silk. The silk is strong, lightweight, and is used to make clothing and other items. Transgenic sheep have been modified to produce more wool. Recently, scientists have created the glowfish, the first transgenic pet available to the public. The glowfish is a zebrafish crossed with a jellyfish that glows in the dark. To date worldwide, the glowfish and rodent are the only genetically modified animals that have been approved. Today, Dr. Pauline Chang and Ms. Ava Eagle will be having a debate about transgenic organisms. Dr. Chang is a scientist at the South China Agricultural University who supports the use of transgenic organisms. She was part of the team who first created glow-in-the-dark pigs by injecting their embryos with the DNA of a jellyfish. The ultimate goal of this research is to introduce beneficial genes into larger animals to create less costly and more efficient medicines. She feels that with transgenic organisms, agricultural, medical, and industrial aspects of life will be forever changed. Everyone, give Dr. Chang a round of applause. Ms. Eagle, on the other hand, has different views about the use of transgenic organisms. Ava is a member of the group PETA, which stands for Peoples for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. She believes that experimenting on animals in any way is cruelty and should be put to a stop as soon as possible. She hopes that with all of her protesting, eventually the use of transgenic organisms will be put to a stop. Everyone give Miss Eagle a round of applause. Thank you, yes. I am a firm believer in the creation and the use of transgenic organisms. Transgenic organisms have been able to bring immense change in the agricultural, medical, and industrial fields of life. Humans were created as the most intelligent animals, and therefore we have control over other animals for our benefit. Animals do not have the same rights as us, and it is as simple as that. Animals do not have rights to vote, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, democracy, a developed education system. None of this applies to any other animal. The scientific benefits of creating transgenic organisms greatly outweigh the supposed negatives it creates. The creation of transgenic organisms can even greatly benefit both us humans and animals. Genetic engineering can and is used to improve resistance to disease and to also remove characteristics that have the potential to cause injury, such as horns on cattle. Creating a transgenic organism that is resistant to sentience, but is still identical to normal experimental animals, could also resolve any ethical issues surrounding laboratory experiments on animals. This in which would have a major impact in the scientific field, as there would no longer be any boundaries pertaining to animal experimentation. Thomas Carlyle, the great philosopher, once said, "Man is a tool-using animal. Without tools, he is nothing. With tools, he is all." We are given rule over all organisms in the world, and they are both our tools in which we have to work with. The way the world is now is flawed and will continue to be flawed for all of eternity. There's nothing fixed to be the perfect world. We know this to be true as there are obvious evidence of evolution, and it is proved that the structure of creation has changed over time as some species became extinct and new ones came into being. Changing certain characteristics of certain organisms now is not interfering with the natural structure of the world. Transgenic organisms are leading the search for tomorrow's cure. See and understand that transgenic organisms can bring to us a scientific revolution in many aspects of life, but that does not mean that it's a good thing. Using animals in experiments is completely unethical. As part of PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, I firmly believe that rabbits, sheep, cows, pigs, mice, and every other animal in the matter should have the same rights as us. Surely scientists can find another way of performing the same experiments without the use of innocent creatures. Countless animals are killed or severely disabled in the process of genetic engineering. For every animal successfully created, numerous animals die or are permanently damaged. Many of the embryos that undergo genetic engineering procedures do not survive, and of those that do survive, only a small proportion carry the genetic alteration of interest. Even though these transgenic animals may potentially help human beings, they definitely don't help the animal itself. We are taught the golden rule as young children, and all major religions teach principles of nonviolence and kindness. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Ethical treatment, the golden rule, must be extended to all living beings, including animals. Would we imprison our children in cages too small for them to move? Would we deliberately infect our friends with diseases and leave them untreated? Of course not. So why would we do the same to other beings? Regardless of their capabilities, no living being deserves to be abused. We believe that it's wrong to torture infants and disabled human beings who don't have the same abilities as adults. In the same way, all beings deserve liberty and respect, not because they share the characteristics we admire in ourselves, but because they are living beings. Just because we are more intelligent animals doesn't mean our lives are worth more. We share the same evolutionary origins, we inhabit the same earth, and we are ruled by the same laws of nature. We are all the same. That's where you're wrong, Miss Eagle. We are definitely not all the same. We are the most intelligent beings, and I believe that actually does make our lives worth more. We as humans have the ability to create the technology that can revolutionize the world, and we should use these gifts to the best of our abilities. Transgenic animals have the potential to improve quality of life for humans. In many cases, transgenic animals actually have the potential to save human lives. Patients die every year from a lack of replacement heart, liver, or kidney. Transgenic pigs may provide the transplant organs needed to alleviate the shortfall. Nutrient supply and pharmaceuticals are being obtained from the milk of transplant cows, sheep, and goats. The potential treatments for the genetic diseases is a huge, and transgenic animals can play a role. Yes, many innocent animals die through some of these experiments. However, what better way to learn than through making mistakes? Once a transgenic animal is perfected, it has the potential to save millions of lives in the future. I honestly don't see that the lives of useless animals such as pigs can be worth as much as the lives of intelligent human beings. Dr. Chang, I know that transgenic animals are a huge scientific revolution. I just don't understand how you and other scientists can live with yourself, knowing that you've killed so many animals and put countless creatures in pain. Can we not find an alternative to these experiments where we don't have to use animals? Some scientists claim that the difference between animals and humans is that humans have a capacity for moral judgment and thought. We are ethical, sentient beings, whereas certain animals are only sentient beings. This unquestionably suggests that humans have a moral obligation not to inflict suffering to animals that are clearly capable of experiencing suffering. I am a Christian, which shapes my view of this topic. God laid down the structure of creation, and any tampering with it is sinful. Manipulating DNA is manipulating life itself, and this is tampering with something that God did not intend humanity to meddle with. God tells us in the Bible to take care of the earth and everything in it, including animals. Proverbs 12 verse 10 states, "Whoever is righteous has regards for the life of his beast." Treating animals respectfully is just a humane and ethical thing to do. Transgenic organisms are obviously a very controversial topic. What do we value more, research and technology or living organisms? There are many benefits to creating transgenic organisms, such as a better understanding of gene function, the ability to model human diseases such as cancer to better understand, treat, and develop medications, and to create organisms resistant to disease. We can also create organisms better suited for human needs, such as sheep with more wool or cows that produce more milk. However, for every successful transgenic organism, countless more die or become severely disabled in the process. The question is it worth it? During the discussion of transgenic organisms, the term playing God often comes up. The reasoning behind this is that by creating our own unnatural hybrid organisms, we are essentially doing what God did during the creation of the world. But putting the direct ethicalities of transgenic organisms aside, is the mere action of using what God gave us to better our lives wrong? This is where the controversy of the situation comes into play. Are transgenic organisms a way of telling God that creation is not good enough, that he messed something up and that it's our duty to fix it? In Genesis, God created the earth and everything was in it, and it was good. So why do we feel the need to fix it? However, I think that we need to see transgenic organisms as a way of using his creation instead of changing it. There's obviously a line that needs to be drawn somewhere, but transgenic organisms are a huge step in the field of science, industry, and medicine. Just the fact that we can create an organism that is resistant to certain diseases is an amazing feat, and we should praise the one who gave us the gifts and abilities to do this. But where should the line be drawn, and how do we know where to draw it? There's no definite answer to this question, but I think the line should be drawn when the purpose of creating transgenic animals turns from scientific, medical, industrial, and economic reasons. The line should be drawn here because once transgenic organisms are being made for other reasons, it suddenly becomes more about human greed and less about scientific research and discovery.